Jury gives death sentence to man who set clerk on fire. On May 20, 2012, a crime of unimaginable cruelty unfolded in Garland, Texas. Matthew Johnson entered the Fina Whip-In convenience store, forever altering the lives of those connected to it. The victim was Nancy Harris, a 76-year-old woman simply working her shift. Johnson's actions were not impulsive, they were calculated. He carried with him the tools of his horrific plan, lighter fluid and a lighter. The store's surveillance system captured the unfolding nightmare. Johnson poured the lighter fluid on Nancy Harris. He then robbed her, and with callous disregard, set her ablaze. The flames engulfed her, inflicting unimaginable pain. Nancy Harris sustained burns over 40% of her body. Despite the efforts of medical professionals, she succumbed to her injuries days later. Her death was a direct result of Johnson's brutal actions. A surveillance footage became a key piece of evidence. It showed Johnson entering the store, armed with the means to commit his heinous act. The video documented the moment he poured the fluid on Harris. The footage continued, showing Johnson demanding money and taking items from the store. Then, the horrifying image of Nancy Harris engulfed in flames, desperately running from behind the counter. Johnson, in stark contrast, calmly walked out of the store, even taking candy as he left. In the immediate aftermath, Nancy Harris fought to extinguish the flames consuming her. Her desperate struggle was a testament to her will to survive. First responders arrived quickly, providing aid to the severely injured woman. Police and paramedics rushed Harris to the hospital. Before losing consciousness, she identified Matthew Johnson as her attacker. This identification would prove crucial in the subsequent investigation. Meanwhile, residents in the area reported seeing a man matching Johnson's description. He was attempting to enter a neighbor's home, raising suspicion. Police quickly responded to the reports. A foot chase ensued, ending with the apprehension of Matthew Johnson. He was taken into custody and the investigation began in earnest. Incriminating evidence was soon discovered. Harris's ring and other stolen items were found on Johnson's person. This evidence further solidified his connection to the crime. The case against him began to take shape. Give a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. The trial of Matthew Johnson was divided into two distinct phases. The first phase focused on determining guilt or innocence. The second phase, if necessary, would determine the appropriate punishment. The state presented a compelling case, meticulously linking Johnson to the crime. The evidence was overwhelming, leaving little doubt as to his involvement. The prosecution built a strong narrative of premeditation and malice. The defense, in a surprising move, did not call any witnesses. This decision left the state's evidence largely unchallenged. The jury was left to consider the prosecution's case without rebuttal. The jury deliberated and ultimately found Johnson guilty of capital murder. This conviction triggered the second phase of the trial, the punishment phase. The stakes were now even higher. During the punishment phase, Johnson himself took the stand. He claimed he did not intend to kill Nancy Harris. His testimony was an attempt to sway the jury towards a lesser sentence. Johnson stated he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time of the crime. He argued that his impaired state affected his judgment and actions. He pleaded for forgiveness and mercy. The state countered Johnson's claims by presenting his extensive criminal history. They also introduced evidence of other bad acts he had committed. This was intended to demonstrate a pattern of violent behavior. In an attempt to humanize Johnson, his supervisors and family members testified. They spoke of his positive qualities and potential for rehabilitation. They hoped to persuade the jury to spare his life. Expert witnesses were called to testify about drug addiction and Johnson's state of mind. They provided context for his actions, but ultimately, the jury had to weigh all the evidence. The question of his culpability remained central. Perhaps the most emotionally charged part of the trial was the victim impact statements. Harris's family members addressed the court, expressing their profound grief. Their words painted a vivid picture of their loss. They spoke of their anger and their inability to forgive Johnson for his actions. They described the lasting impact of Harris's death on their lives. The courtroom was filled with raw emotion. Throughout the victim impact statements, Johnson showed no visible emotion. His stoicism was noted by many in the courtroom. His lack of reaction further fueled the family's sense of injustice. The jury deliberated once more, this time to determine Johnson's fate. They had to consider all the evidence presented during both phases of the trial. The decision was a weighty one. Ultimately, the jury sentenced Johnson to death. They concluded that there were no mitigating circumstances sufficient to warrant a lesser sentence. They also believed that Johnson would remain a threat to society if allowed to live. The jury's decision reflected their belief that Johnson's actions were particularly heinous. The brutality of the crime and the lack of remorse weighed heavily on their minds. The death sentence was their final judgment. Johnson's attorney acknowledged the powerful impact of the surveillance video on the jury. The visual evidence of the crime was undeniable and difficult to overcome. The video served as a constant reminder of Johnson's actions. The case is now subject to an automatic appeal, as is standard in death penalty cases. This appeal process will involve a thorough review of the trial proceedings. The legal battle is far from over. Harris's family expressed a sense of justice upon hearing the verdict. However, they emphasized that the death sentence would not bring their loved one back. Their grief remained palpable. They stated they did not believe Johnson was truly remorseful for his actions. They felt his pleas for mercy were insincere. Their pain and anger were still very much present. Johnson, for his part, reportedly expected the death sentence. He had previously stated that he deserved the death penalty for his crime. His acceptance of the verdict was unsettling to some. The state presented additional evidence during the trial, including dashboard camera video from the scene. This video provided further context and detail about the crime scene. It added another layer of visual evidence for the jury to consider. A nurse testified about Harris's pain and her attempts to communicate before her death. This testimony offered a glimpse into Harris's final moments. It underscored the suffering she endured. Johnson himself testified about his troubled background, including his drug abuse and depression. He claimed he was sexually abused as a child and began smoking marijuana at a young age. He presented this as context for his actions, but not as an excuse.